Mead, hush and listen. The words slid through the shipyard bar like a wire through soft fruit. This wasn't an invitation. It was a command wrapped in velvet and smoke. The storyteller, short, lithe, a scar like a stray comet across one cheek, took a slow sip of amber and let the room's noise settle around her. Freight captains bargained over spare parts. Drifters lost at the tables tried not to look lost. No one noticed another voice in the corner, which is exactly how she wanted it. 26 years ago, she said, the Orzen Dominion didn't fall, it fragmented. Empires don't sink, they shatter, and the shards keep cutting long after the sound is gone. That was when the archive of the final edict sent their best closer to erase a woman who refused to end in the dark. They sent him to Westbreaker Spire in a salt storm that peeled paint off iron. They sent him after a purple-furred Vulpine, 25 years old, ears like grave knives, eyes like dusk, named Nixery Vale. The man across from her stopped, edging his hand toward a concealed knife. Good. He was listening now, not thinking. The closer's name was Dane Cade. She went on. He'd spent a quarter-century turning people into punctuation. But that night, he decided the sentence could go on. She set the glass down with the precision of a clockmaker and leaned in. Here's how it started. 6 jackdaw drones in a storm, a cliff of corroded arches, and a woman who wouldn't give them the sound they were calibrated to harvest. Rain moved sideways at Westbreaker, flensed to needles by ocean wind. Nixery Vale hung from rust-driven I-beams rammed into the cliff. Biocables laced her wrists, pulsing a cruel, sustainable current. Hurt, hold, never kill. Salt crusted her purple fur to a darker sheen. The storm painted her in mercury and bruise. The jackdaws wheeled above her, woodplates beating in a cold rhythm. Tap, 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 hold, dive. Their voice since clicked, target conscious, maintain distress. Nixery had stopped performing an hour ago. Pain had a memory, she'd learned to deny it witnesses. Lightning opened the world for a heartbeat, and showed her tormentors clearly. Old Earth neural seeds bolted into Orzen cruelty stacks, beautiful the way bombs are honest. One descended, talons tasting the air. Interrogators inbound, it said. Conscious or sedated when they begin? She lifted her head. Ask something worthy. The drone tilted its chassis, feather array whispering. Such as? Such as, who's walking up your storm like it belongs to him? Dane Cade appeared as a moving refusal of weather. Long coat like a wet banner, boots finding purchase where there shouldn't be any. He lit a stick with a windcup hand, the tiny flame a defiant star. Scar over one brow. Gunmetal eyes that had watched too many endings. He didn't raise his voice. He tuned it to that frequency that cuts chaos. Archive of the Final Edict, he said. Authentication Delta 7 fractal. The jackdaws processed. Cade. Authority meant audits. Audits meant decommissioning. Proceed, Agent Cade. He looked at Nixery, spine straight, chin angled like a blade, then took a tuning fork from a coat seam. 3 soft taps against steel, 1 long hum. The sound slid under the storm, through it, rearranged it. Jackdaw threat matrices shivered. Their lock watcher subroutines blinked. Eyes on mine, he told her. Left eye only. Romance during torture? Bold, she said and did it. Cade thumbed a maintenance ferret against her left shackle. The jackdaws, already patterned dizzy from the hum and the fixed gaze, flagged. Metal on lock, as the active hazard. 12 beak strikes in 4 seconds. The restraint failed. He mirrored on the right. The flock obliged, loyal to their own confusion. Her arms dropped like falling verdicts. Blood heat rushed back, bright enough to make her sway. She caught herself. Clever, she breathed. They'll catch up. They only need to be wrong for a moment, Cade said. We only need a moment. 3 local enforcers in cheap rain armor clattered down the catwalk, cloaks hissing. The leader's eyes glowed with discount augments. Agent. The directive was termination. Cade exhaled smoke. It always is. He moved, not fast but precise. Fingers on the leader's carotid, 3 seconds to darkness. Rifle falling, caught, stock driven into the second officer's knee, thunder ate the crack. The third began to retreat, which was bravery by other means. Cade palmed the first rifle's power coupling and bled feedback into the tri-linked tacknet. Cloaks died. Sights died. The jackdaws, reading the electronic flatline as an emergent threat, dove. Metal tore raincoats first, then flesh. Screams lasted 8 seconds. Feeding subroutines, much longer. Nixery watched without flinching. "You bought yourself an hour," she said. 40 minutes, Cade corrected. He tapped a fallen comm, sent a clipped burst on a rescue band, malfunction, recovery. Crushed it underheel. "Can you run?" She tested weight. Every nerve howled. She nodded. "Why?" "You took something from me once," he said. "So I took the bill and folded it into a different shape." Her ears flicked. "What did I take?" He didn't answer yet. They moved. The cliff path was a bad memory-made architecture. Wind tried to push them back into endings. He shrugged out of his coat and wrapped it around her. She leaned into the heat without asking. "What's your name, archive man?" "Dane Cade." "Nixery Vale," she said, and the way she carried her name made it sound like a promise kept. "You stole something from me," he said when the roar was behind them. "Dock 9, Derelict Station. 26 years ago." She looked at him sidelong. "I file salvage legally." "I was 15, he said. "And dying. You hid me for a month and taught me how to read the space between stars." She blinked rain and surprise. "You were all elbows and hunger. And hope," he said. "You gave me some." Archive safe flat hash B12 pretended to be alive. Mail pile like a bad habit, a dead fern, a cooling unit that hummed one floor over to fool listeners. Cade opened the lock with a 12-point fingertip cipher he wasn't supposed to remember. The door sighed like a tired secret. "All the charm of a morgue drawer," Nixery said, water making stars on the cracked lino. "Morgues never have hot water," Cade said, bolting the door and ghosting the house emitters. Next door, a couple arguing, then making up, then a news anchor lying. "Sit." "I don't need." "Sit." Not an order exactly, not a request either. She obeyed, and the cot sang like thin steel. He opened a black med kit that looked military because it was. Skin patches, nerve banks, bone pleaters, tools for keeping bodies useful. "This will sting." "Everything does." Her fingers, warm even soaked, tightened lightly on his shoulder as he pressed the patch to a gash that refused to close. "You asked why?" she said, studying him as he worked. "Why burn your life for someone who signed salvage rights with a grin?" He didn't answer. He finished, stood, fetched a bottle left by a previous ghost, poured 2 glasses. He held out one, their fingers touched. "Do you know what they call me at the archive?" "I don't memorize epitaphs." The final stroke. He didn't drink. He reached under his shirt and brought out a small copper bird, an origami kestrel on a leather cord. Worn smooth by skin. Nixery froze. Her glass jolted, shattered, whiskey becoming an amber continent on the floor. "That's not. You tied it on me," he said softly. "Dock 9. You said find your way. I tried. 3 months later they found me first and gave me a leash." She reached, stopped, reached again, and traced the scars long healed along his jaw. "The boy had a crush. He was in love with you," Kate said, flat as a diagnostic. "The way 15-year-olds burn. Absolute. Ridiculous." "You're 46, she said. "I'm 25. She smiled, wicked and weary at once. "Different math." Footsteps paused outside the door. A shadow cut the threshold. Cade changed the emitter track. The fake couple got louder in anatomically implausible ways. The shadow drifted on. "We move," he said. "Have you kept anything safe lately?" "A child," Nixery said. 9 years old. She can touch a circuit and slip inside. No bridge. No hardware. She thinks code is a song." Cade went still. Impossible. The archive doesn't chase impossible, she said. It chases competition. The route lines were how a city remembers it used to be alive: ribs of service tunnels, disused arteries, old water singing old songs. They ghosted through abandoned markets and a fountain that had been dry so long it had learned dust. Voices lived in the walls, people who chose shadow over the archive's light. Nixery moved like water knows the rocks. Cade moved like a memory remembers the wound. You asked why I trust you, she said, vaulting a toppled kiosk. Because I looked for you after Derelict. 6 months. Every port. Your name had already been harvested. The archive is tireless when it wants to erase a person. You looked, he echoed, and something in his voice cracked on a seam and healed stronger. They reached an access hatch painted to look ignored. Nixery tapped 5 places that weren't a code so much as a confession. The panel sighed open. Heat rose from geothermal taps that never got the memo the city had died. They'll know me here, she warned. And hate you. They'll hate who I've been, Cade said. I'm working on the part that comes after. A light at the tunnel mouth turned everything plague green. A line of black armor flowed in with military indifference to poetry. Neural disruptors hummed in hands that had written too many endings. In their center, a thin man in a perfect coat, Executor Halvin Pike. The archive's favorite surgeon of narratives. Cade, Pike said, voice crisp as paperwork. Walk back your mistake. Deliver the target. Be the pen you were forged to be, and I will give you my chair. And if I refuse? Then you are a rogue asset who killed 3 officers in a storm and fled with an insurgent. You will be stripped of name, number, pension, rumor. You will become noise. Cade lit his last stick and watched smoke draw diagrams in the route lines. You think I care about reputation, he said. I care about purpose. You gave me one. Today I choose a different kind of sentence. Poetry, Pike said, bored. We don't pay for poetry. You will, Nixery murmured. 3 things happened like they were waiting on a conductor. Cade thumbed an emergency beacon he'd lifted from the dead enforcers. Nixery's bioluminescence flared until shadow had nowhere to live. The route line people cut the lights. Blackness. A dozen disruptors fired at last known ghosts and burned air. 2 bodies moved deeper, hand in hand, faster than regret. 53 minutes of crawl space. Counting breath. Counting boots on steel, the tempo of men paid to end other people's stories. At minute 54, Cade's chest comm vibrated a frequency only 3 officers knew he still used. Parley, Pike said. Come alone to Plaza Command. We have her. Nixery's voice rode in after, thin with dampeners, defiant like gravity. Junction 7. Don't. Line dead. Cade emerged alone into Plaza's false day. Harsh lights over black armor. The archive's mobile command center hulked like a welded gilt. Inside, maps like wounds, people like instruments. Pike stood backlit by data. You came, the executor said without looking up. You have something of mine, Cade replied. Ours, Pike corrected. Holding 3. Full spectrum. Cade stopped exactly 3 meters from the desk, talking distance, not killing distance, though everyone in the room knew he could cross it before a finger found a trigger. He placed 2 objects on the table, his copper kestrel and a mil-spec slate. Sentiment won't unlock that, Pike said, but his hand moved anyway, because power enjoys touching things. The slate drank his thumb and bloomed files like a disease. Operations that were supposed to be rumor. Funds that were supposed to be missing. Shipments that were supposed to be humanitarian but weren't. Black clinics. Brass signatures. You've been busy, Pike said after a long time. He'd gone the color of old paper. Spying on us. Documenting reality, Cade said. There's a difference. I learned from you to always have a second ending in my pocket. You're in those files 47 times. As an instrument, Cade said. Instruments aren't indicted, conductors are. What do you want? Section 9, Cade said. Field amendment by cost calculus. Compliance costs me my soul. Defiance costs you one asset and spares your skeleton a public airing. He nudged the slate. We walk. You report us ashes. You keep your chair. And the child? Pike said softly. We'll find her. Cade smiled without joy. You'll search for a ghost in a city built out of them. Silence stretched until it snapped. Pike lifted a hand, not toward an alarm but toward a door. Release the insurgent, he said, and tried not to sound like he'd swallowed a razor blade. Nixery didn't stumble when the door spilled her. She arrived. Jumpsuit hanging in ruin. Fur bristling to light. Ears askew with fury. You're late, she said, then clocked the slate bleeding secrets, and the way Cade's face wasn't quite his operative's mask anymore. What did you spend? Nothing I wanted to keep. They took a back way that was technically a pipe and not a way at all. A captain with a scar for a name popped a panel, gestured them deeper, disappeared because some people are better at that than science. The safe room was 3 lies and a drop down. A lamp burned like stubbornness. On a crate, a small figure looked up from a cloud of invisible interfaces and blinked eyes full of dancing code. She was small for 9, verdant by lineage but not by color. Her purple skin was threaded with mercury filaments that pulse like thinking. You're the one who chose and overend, she said, as if greeting a concept. Mom said you'd come. Not biological, Nixery said quickly, the way you hide your heart with a joke. Found her in a lab that thought children were ports. They made me to be a door, the girl said. She taught me to be a person. She tilted her head. You're wearing 17 trackers. 3 are inside. Do you want them gone? Please, Cade said. She didn't touch him. Heat bloomed at wrist, shoulder, skull base, the archive's favorite leash points, then died. He felt very suddenly like a man standing where his name should be and finding space instead. It felt like sky. What do they call you? He asked. Ori 9, she said. Because that's how many times they tried to name me. Do you like it? It's mine now, she decided, and smiled like the first line of a song. The ship didn't exist on any registry that admitted to daylight. It sat in a private berth rented by a company whose board had never been born. Its lines were sleek in the way knives are honest, but its interior felt composed rather than assembled. Kestrel's echo. Nixery read along the hull, fingertips lingering as if she could hear its heartbeat. She's fast, Cade said, almost shy in a way that looked odd on a man who'd ended 47 lives. She's ours if you want her. Ori drifted into the NAV cradle as if gravity had been rewritten around her. The console woke like it recognized family. You wired this like music, she said, eyes a sudden lake of quicksilver. No, like an answer to a question you didn't know how to ask until you built it. We launch now, Cade said, and the echo rose through weather with the grace of a decision made properly. Deep black swallowed them kindly. The ship hummed the lullaby of competent engineering. In the cargo bay turned workshop, Cade laid out tools the way surgeons arrange faith. Nixery found him there, arms crossed, watching a man who had built a way out of ending for a decade without admitting why. You didn't sleep, she said. Sleep is when the archive comes, he said lightly. I'm adjusting. She nodded, then reached and lifted the copper kestrel from the bench. He'd opened the wings and etched them with a route, derelict to Westbreaker to this invisible lane, an argument in metal against inevitability. I tied this on a starving boy, she said. He learned to read stars between the lines. What do you want now, Dane Cade? He considered the question as if it were explosive, which in a way it was. Something that doesn't require permission to be real, he said. Then he laughed. Something that uses and more than but. Poetry, she teased. We don't get paid for it, he said, but we live by it. She kissed him. Not desperation, not gratitude. Decision. 2 adults choosing a vector and being honest about it. The ship felt suddenly too small for the idea of future, and somehow exactly the right size for the people inside it. They ran cold lanes the archive forgot after budget season. Ori mapped black sites like a child sketching treasure, induction wells where the Dominion had taught nightmares to stand up, quiet farms where empathy was drained and bottled. The list was too long to be survivable, which meant it demanded survival. We can't burn them all, Kate said over a scatter map of sins. We don't burn, Mixery said. We expose and then we steal. Records for the Senate's carnivores. Prisoners for us. Poetry, Ori said absently, dismantling a cipher with her mind. Choke a machine with truth and it stutters. They hit the first site in a broken asteroid belt called the Bone Orchard, because naming things matters. Nixery cut a hole in a hull without waking its alarms, moving like water forgotten by gravity. Cade ghosted through corridors that taught him what silence really means. Ori sang in the wires and doors opened as if embarrassed they'd ever been closed. They left with 14 people who belonged to no word the archive liked to use for humans. They left a drive full of rotting secrets hammering toward a dozen news decks with good lawyers. They left a symbol scratched in a place only certain eyes would check: 3 taps, hold, sweep. Not a signature. A promise. There were 3 jumps out when the archive remembered pride. Interdictors netted the lane, throwing gravity weaves like fishermen. Strike pods bloomed and latched, hungry as ticks. The echo's hull rang like a bell in a temple. Boarders, Cade said, already moving. Guns, Ori said, flat with a 9-year-old's annoyance at being interrupted. Rude. Nixery met the first cutter at the threshold and sent it home in 4 pieces. She could fight in light or dark. The root lines had taught her muscles about honesty. Cade moved with the inevitability of habit, but there was a new math in him: subdue, not erase, whenever physics allowed it. Ori found the pod umbilicals in the echo's belly and convinced them to think they were snakes biting themselves. On the spine, Cade caught a striker's wrist, turned, bled momentum into a wall that had deserved it. The helmet popped. Under it, a face barely older than Ori's, except for the eyes. Archive eyes only learned one thing. You can go, Cade said, hauling the striker to an escape couch. Tell Pike we prefer and poetry. The kid spat, but the couch fired anyway. They broke net on a gravity glissando Ori wrote on the fly, the kind of maneuver that makes engineers swear either devotion or hatred. The echo slid into a lane no map admitted existed and refused pursuit, which is a sentence you can choose if you've earned it. You can't build a resistance out of victory laps, you build it out of kitchens. The echo learned port kitchens, church kitchens, community kitchens that fed people whose names the archive had spelled incorrectly on purpose. They traded drive coolant for vegetables, secrets for shelter, laughter for the kind of advice maps don't write down. On Sable's Rest, an old woman wired their deck plating with prayer yarn and said it would fool guns curious about where to aim. On Half Moon Pier, a boy with a jaw like stubbornness slipped Nixery a paper flyer calling for a general strike and asked for a signature. She wrote Veil and drew 3 taps that looked like music notation. On Trillium Gap, a pilot named Yara Stone looked at Cade's hands and said, "Those are artists' fingers, not butchers." And he didn't argue for once. Ori filled a wall with lines about black sites: where, who, when. The list made the echo feel simultaneously too small and exactly right. We can't get them all, Ori said one night, sitting cross-legged with a blaze of code in her eyes. But each one we turn into a story infects 10 more. That's how truth works, Mixery said. It's viral and patient and shameless. The bar called itself the Vacuum Garden because nobody plants flowers in space and irony is cheap. The storyteller finished her glass and tilted it so the last drop fell exactly when she wanted it to. That, she said to the man pretending not to sweat across from her, is how Dane Cade and Nixery Vale stopped being deletions and started being a conjunction. His grin came back like mold. His hand found her thigh under the table. Cute tale, sweetheart. You weren't born yet. How would you know? The glass moved faster than his thought. One moment it was a cylinder. Next it was a constellation of corrective surgery on his skull. He went limp, which was the smartest thing he'd done that night. The bar shut up like a held breath. For the record, said the storyteller, standing with a fluid economy that promised expensive lessons. I know because Ori 9 doesn't forget anything. And because Nixery Vale is my mother. And because Dame Cade taught me where to put the word and. She peeled her jacket back. 2 plasma blades lounged at her hips like confident cats. The hilts were worn the way good tools get, proof, not pose. A whisper from a corner. That's the Glass Edge Phantom. Another whisper ate it. Shut up. She'll hear you. She tossed cred on the bar, enough for glass, blood, and therapy, and headed for the door. Her steps fell into a rhythm the room didn't realize it knew. 3 taps, hold, sweep. Not a code. A lineage. At the threshold, she looked back once, the way some storms do before they decide whether you're worth drowning. They're still out there, she said. The kestrel's echo jumps where comfort grows fat. Maybe you've seen them and didn't know it. Ghosts are funny that way. Outside, she touched a calm nested in her ear. Story delivered, she said. Ori, they bought it. Good, came the reply, an older voice with a bright undertow of machinery. Mom has a lead on 2 final edict vaults. Dad is, pretending he's quit smoking and actually planning 17 moves ahead. The storyteller, Sable Vale Cade, laughed, and it sounded like both of her parents at once. She drew one blade to check its charge against neon and rain. Tell them I'm coming, she said. Tell them the ampersand wins. She disappeared into the maze of port alleys like a promise keeping itself. The kestrel's echo rode a cold lane that once served as a trade artery before the Dominion collapse. Its walls still bore faded advertisements for luxuries no one remembered how to crave. Ori 9's eyes flickered silver. The archive just redirected 6 couriers, she said. Destination, Vault of Quiet Names. They're scrubbing identities. Nixery's ears pinned back. That's their Black Erasure program. Not executions. Worse, forgettings. People exist, then don't. Families go to pray and realize the prayers don't land anywhere. Cade leaned over the map she projected, his face drawn sharp in the light. If they're accelerating, it means Pike is afraid. He's pruning the ledger. Ori's lips curved in something too brittle to be a smile. We can cut the gardener. They reached the vault 3 days later. A station disguised as a religious retreat, orbiting a dead moon. Pilgrims in plain robes filed inside to light candles they didn't know fueled deletion algorithms. Inside the sanctum, walls whispered names like confessions. Every breath triggered a quiet subtraction somewhere else in the galaxy. Nixery unsheathed her twin plasma hooks. You take the machine, she told Ori. I'll handle the faithful. Cade stopped her. They're not faithful, they're hostages. Move careful. The strike unfolded like a prayer gone wrong. Ori slid into the vault's nervous system, fingers twitching as invisible keystones realigned. The walls began vomiting names back into existence. Somewhere, across thousands of sectors, families gasped as missing faces reappeared in memory. Pike's voice blared through the sanctum, tinny with fury. You are rewriting scripture, Cade! Cade picked up a candle, flame steady despite recycled air. No, he said. I'm just reminding it what it meant in the first draft. The vault burned behind them, not with fire, but with data suddenly free. The archive struck back less than a week later. Not jackdaws this time. Dogs of glass. Cybernetic quadrupeds built from mirrored alloy, designed to confuse targeting systems and terrify in close quarters. They hit the echo at dock silent until the first claw scraped steel. Nixery moved like the storm that had once tried to kill her. Hooks sang arcs of plasma. Glass dogs shattered, their mirrored bodies splitting into screaming shards that mimicked her own reflection. Every swing showed her 100 versions of herself dying. Cade found the handler, a pale woman with archive tattoos crawling up her throat like ivy. He pinned her against the dock bulkhead. Who sent you? Her smile showed teeth filed to points. Pike doesn't care if you live or die. He only cares you don't matter. Cade twisted until her tattooed skin sparked with subdermal detonators. She went still, eyes wide. Tell him, Cade said, voice like a knife slipping into a sheath. I've been irrelevant for 26 years. And it's working out fine. Ori burned the handler's leash code from the Echo's hull, erasing the last of the dogs with a flick of her eyes. She looked drained, silver dimmed. That costs, she whispered. Nixery knelt, one hand on her shoulder. We'll pay together. Always together. Cade lit a cigarette, then crushed it between fingers instead of lips. He let the tobacco scatter into the wind. We can't stay reactive, he said. Next time, we hit first. The ash markets weren't on any chart, but anyone desperate enough could find them. They floated in the gravity shadow of a failed star, barges welded together by criminals who didn't believe in endings. Every stall sold something illegal, weapons coated to owner's blood, identities sealed in glass vials, even children who spoke languages no one admitted teaching them. The kestrel's echo threaded and silent. Ori 9's voice trembled with disgust. They're trading archive rejects. Failed experiments, broken operatives. Nixery's hooks rattled against her thighs. Failed doesn't mean worthless. It means dangerous to the wrong people. They moved in like ghosts. Cade let his reputation do most of the work. Archive defectors still carried weight in the markets. We're looking for Pike's shipments, he told a broker with metal teeth. The broker laughed. Pike? He sells fear wholesale. You want proof? Look. He pointed toward a cage. Inside, 3 children with silver-threaded eyes hummed in unison, powering a console they couldn't possibly understand. Ori froze. Her own veins glowed faintly in resonance. He's replicating me, she whispered. Nixery's ears flattened. Not replicating. Butchering. The strike was messy. They cut chains, fried consoles, spilled blood only when forced. Cade pressed his palm against the broker's throat. Tell Pike, he growled. I've seen his factory. And I'm going to close it one child at a time. The echo lifted from the ash markets with 7 more mouths to feed and a silence that tasted of fury. Executor Pike didn't waste time. Within days, the archive broadcast a message across shadow channels. Not encrypted, not hidden, deliberately public. Dane Cade. Nixery Vale. Ori 9. You think you are a sentence without a period. You are mistaken. You are a question mark, and I will erase the question. It wasn't just rhetoric. Pike moved fleets. Archive ships sealed off 3 trade routes, cut supply lines, and declared an amnesty. Anyone delivering Cade or Nixery alive would be given new identities and cleared records. Smart, Cade admitted, watching the feed flicker across the Echo's console. He's weaponizing desperation. Nixery slammed a fist into the bulkhead. He's turning the galaxy into bounty hunters. Ori's eyes silvered, parsing incoming chatter. Already working. 3 syndicates changed sides. 1 priesthood. 2 families. She shivered. We've become math. Variables on his ledger. Cade lit another cigarette, stared at it, then crushed it out again. Then we stop being variables. We show them constants. Nixery tilted her head. And what constant do you propose? Cade's gunmetal eyes burned with decision. We go after the archive's heart. Pike thinks he's the author of this story. Time to show him the pen has other hands. The archive didn't just erase people, it rewrote them. The scriptorium was where those edits began, an orbital forge hidden inside a cometary cluster. From outside it looked like ice and rock. From inside, it was a cathedral of code. Whole walls of etched glass panels carried the true identities of billions, waiting for a hand to cross them out. Ori 9 pressed a palm to the viewport. Silver filaments lit her skin. They keep souls here, she whispered. Not bodies, souls written as coordinates. Nixery's voice was low, reverent, and furious all at once. This is where they steal the right to memory. Cade studied the layout, cold calculation in his eyes. We don't destroy it. We don't have the firepower. But we can steal pieces, show the galaxy the archive's handwriting. They infiltrated in silence. Nixery moved through shadows with her hooks collapsed to short blades. Cade ghosted past sensor pylons, his old codes still carrying authority. Ori slipped into the system itself, breathing algorithms like air. Alarms sounded 3 minutes in. Pike had expected them. But instead of a kill order, the loudspeakers crooned with his voice. "Welcome, Dane. Welcome, Nixery. Welcome, little anomaly. I've written endings for you. Come take a look." Every corridor glowed with projected epitaphs: Cade, traitor; Vale, terrorist; Ori, malfunction. Nixery's fur bristled. "He's baiting us." "Yes," Cade said grimly, drawing his weapon. "And we're going to bite." The trap didn't spring with soldiers. It sprang with people. The margins, ex-archive operatives who had chosen survival over loyalty, stepped from the shadows. Men and women Cade had once trained with, once bled beside. Their faces were maps of regret. "Dane," said the one in front, a broad-shouldered man with a neck tattoo of a broken compass. "You left us behind." "You chose the leash," Cade replied. His voice carried no heat, just precision. "I cut mine," the compass man sneered. "Pike says we can earn amnesty if we take you down." Nixery slid between them, her voice sharp as her hooks. "And you believe the Butcher of Endings honors promises?" Ori spoke, voice resonant with quantum undertone. "He's already erased half your records. You don't know it, but your names are gone from the grid." The margins faltered. Some checked their slates. Blank identities stared back. Panic rippled. Cade seized the moment. "You can die as Pike's tools or live as something else. Choose your punctuation." The margins broke in half, some lowering weapons, some raising them. The fight that followed wasn't clean. Blood hit the scriptorium's sacred glass, smearing names back into existence. Nixery fought like fury given form, Cade with the precision of inevitability. Ori overloaded the room's systems, turning the archive's own epitaphs into shields of burning light. When it was over, the survivors weren't enemies anymore. They were refugees. The Echo had grown another burden, and another army. The Kestrel's Echo limped into the shadow of an asteroid hollowed out and repurposed as a monastery. Centuries ago, monks had carved their prayers into the rock. Now the archive had turned the place into a vault for confiscated relics, artifacts, data cores, even living prisoners considered too symbolic to kill. The margins who'd chosen to follow Cade were uneasy. "We've traded one leash for another," one muttered. "You'll lead us into fire." Nixery's ears flicked back. "Better fire than silence." Ori 9 tilted her head, her silver eyes flickering with unseen streams. "They've layered false prayers into the monastery's systems. Every chant is code for surveillance. I can undo it. But the monks, they've been rewritten." Inside, the walls glowed with bioluminescent scripture. The monks themselves shuffled like shadows, their eyes milky, voices murmuring lines of archive propaganda. When Nixery touched one, he flinched as if burned. "They cut out their memories," she whispered. Cade's jaw tightened. "Then we give them new ones." The plan unfolded in silence. Ori rewove the chant into a liberation code, Nixery cut through guards who had forgotten compassion, and Cade hunted the reliquary keepers. At the core, they found a prison cell with a single figure, a woman older than any of them expected, her skin pale violet, her hair streaked silver. "Who are you?" Nixery asked. The woman smiled faintly, eyes sharp despite her years. "I am what the archive fears most. I remember everything they tried to erase." She called herself Sereth. Once a senior scribe of the Orizon Dominion, she had defected when the archive began erasing records instead of preserving them. They had kept her alive not out of mercy, but to mine her memory when their own records failed. "I remember you," Sereth said, eyes lingering on Cade. "The boy who carried a copper kestrel. The operative who became their hammer. And now, the man who doubts punctuation." Cade stared. "How?" "I was there when they chose you," she said softly. "I kept the file. You were supposed to be erased when you refused the leash. Instead, they made you their symbol of obedience. Every assassin who came after trained on your story," Ori whispered. "A weaponized myth." Sereth nodded. Exactly. But myths can be rewritten. You want to undo Pike? Then stop fighting him on the battlefield. Fight him in the archive. Turn his narrative inside out. Nixery's fur bristled. How? Sereth leaned closer, her voice a razor of certainty. There is a master ledger, hidden in the Ashen Reaches. Every deletion, every rewrite, every name cut or remade, it all threads back there. Destroy it, and the archive loses its spine. But it is guarded by things older than Pike, older than even the archive itself. Cade exhaled smoke he hadn't lit. Then that's where we go. But Pike was already moving. The archive executor wasn't just a bureaucrat with power. He was a strategist who knew Cade's rhythms better than anyone alive. From his command deck, Pike watched feeds of the failed monastery strike. His smile was thin. Bring me the Phantom Choir, he ordered. The operators around him stiffened. The choir was forbidden, a unit pulled from service because they didn't just kill bodies, they unraveled minds with resonance. Once they sang, their targets often walked willingly into the void, convinced they belonged there. They're unstable, one aide ventured. So is Cade, Pike replied. Like cures like. Across the galaxy, 10 figures stirred from cryostasis, their throats tattooed with song lines, their minds fractured but loyal. Sing him into silence, Pike whispered, as if to himself. Let him learn the difference between commas and nothingness. The echo was halfway through a dark lane when the song began. At first it was faint, like old static. Then it became words without language, syllables designed to bypass thought and pierce the marrow. Nixery stumbled, claws digging into her own arms as if to hold herself here. They're in my head, Ori screamed, her silver eyes flashing wild. They're rewriting the code inside me. Cade snapped open a compartment, pulling free a battered set of resonance dampeners. He slammed them on Nixery's ears, then on Ori's temples, leaving himself unprotected. The choir's voices pressed into his skull like molten glass. He staggered, visions swimming. Old missions replayed. Every kill, every last word. 47 faces, 47 silences. You are nothing but an ending, the voices crooned. A period with legs. Cade dropped to one knee. No, he rasped. Not anymore. He pulled the copper kestrel from under his shirt and held it like scripture. She gave me this to find my way. She gave me a comma. The song faltered, just a beat. Nixery used it to lunge forward, her hooks flaring, cutting through the boarding seals where the choir's ship had latched. Ori pushed herself upright, her mind bleeding silver, and hijacked the choir's resonance, feeding it back into their own throats. The 10 singers fell silent forever. The echo drifted in the aftermath. Cade's ears bled, his voice raw. But he was still here. And so were they. Silence in space wasn't peace, it was exhaustion. They floated between stars, repairing what could be repaired. Nixery tended Cade's wounds, her hands surprisingly gentle for someone who killed with hooks. You risked yourself for us, she murmured. You're the reason I still exist, he replied. Both of you. Ori sat curled near the NAV console, silver veins flickering dim. They tried to overwrite me, she said softly. If I hadn't had you too, I'd be gone. Nixery crouched by her, pulling her into a fierce embrace. We're not letting anyone write our story but us. Cade watched them, something shifting behind his scarred eyes. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about strategy or survival. He was thinking about what came after. But Pike wasn't finished. Somewhere far ahead, the Ashen Reaches waited, a ledger that could break the archive. And Pike, calculating as always, was already there, waiting with the kind of trap you only set for family. Section 24, Ashen Reaches. The Ashen Reaches weren't mapped because they refused mapping. Gravitational currents shifted like moods, stars flickered between alive and dead, and space itself seemed bruised. The echo ghosted in, its hull creaking like old wood. Ori 9 stared at the void through half-closed eyes. This place isn't empty, she whispered. It's remembering. Cade checked the scanners, but the readouts were nonsense. This is where the archive hid the ledger? Sereth, the elder archivist they'd rescued, leaned on the bulkhead like a weary oracle. Not hid. Anchored. Every erasure pulls a thread back here. Burn the ledger, and the archive's web burns too. Nixery's ears twitched uneasily. Then Pike knows we're coming. As if summoned, a structure emerged from the darkness. Not built, grown. A lattice of obsidian towers, threaded with silver veins of data, suspended in gravity that didn't obey law. At its heart, a sphere pulsed with light, beating like a heart. Ori gasped. That's it. Every erased name. Every rewritten truth. All stored in one impossible core. Cade's hand drifted to his pistol. Then that's where Pike will be waiting. They breached the lattice cautiously. The echo's clamps gripped alien stone. Gravity shifted underfoot as if trying to shrug them off. Inside, they found a hall of statues. Figures carved in exact detail, faces, scars, clothing. But each bore no name. Blank plaques where history should be. Nixery's voice was hushed. The erased. Frozen mid-memory. One statue moved. Slowly. Its eyes lit with silver fire. Then another, and another. Not statues, guardians, constructs made of memory itself, defending the ledger. Ori clutched her head. They're coated with grief. I can feel it. Every motion they make is powered by someone's loss. The guardians advanced. Cade raised his weapon but hesitated. Shooting was like killing echoes. He turned instead, using his precision to disrupt their rhythm, firing only at joints to slow them. Nixery cut arcs with her hooks, sparks flying as she severed their connections. Ori screamed, then reached out with her mind. The guardians froze, all at once. Her silver veins glowed blinding bright. They're waiting, she said, for someone to remember them. The constructs lowered their arms. A corridor opened. The guardians bowed. Cade stared at Ori. You just made grief stand down. No, she whispered. I gave it a reason to hope. The corridor spilled into the heart of the lattice. The sphere of light pulsed above a dais of black stone. And there he was. Executor Pike. Cloaked in archive black, his face pale, his eyes sharp as glass. Dane Cade, he said, voice smooth, amplified by the room itself. You finally brought your comma to the end of the sentence. Nixery stepped forward, fur bristling. You call this a sentence? It's a cage. Pike's thin smile never wavered. Cages are what keep chaos civilized. Without the archive, the galaxy collapses. Without endings, stories become noise. Cade's voice was iron. You're not preserving order. You're murdering memory. Pike's gaze shifted to Ori. And you. The anomaly. Do you know what you are? A prototype. You weren't supposed to survive. But your code is mine. All of you belong to me. Ori's veins blazed silver. I'd belong to my mother. And to myself? The dais split. Archive soldiers poured out, 20, 30, 50. And above them, the sphere pulsed faster, feeding them energy. Erase them, Pike commanded. The fight was chaos written into scripture. Archive soldiers surged, their movements coordinated by the sphere's pulse. Every strike they made seemed inevitable. Cade moved with surgical precision, every bullet a word in a defiant sentence. Nixery's plasma hooks danced arcs of violet light, cutting through armor, leaving trails of molten glass. Ori crouched at the dais, her fingers twitching, diving into the sphere's code. Pike stood at the center, untouched, his eyes fixed on Cade. You taught me precision, he called. But you never understood purpose. I gave you one. You gave me a leash. Cade spat. The sphere's pulse accelerated. The soldiers became faster, their movements uncanny. Ori screamed, silver veins blazing as she fought to sever their connection. I can't hold it, she cried. Nixery leapt to her side, one arm holding off a soldier, the other steadying Ori. You don't have to hold it, she said. Redirect it. Ori's eyes went full silver, her voice layered with resonance. Then I'll give them all back their names. The sphere flickered. Soldiers staggered, clutching their heads as erased memories returned. Half collapsed, screaming, their identities crashing into them. The others threw down their weapons. The tide shifted. But Pike wasn't finished. The executor stepped onto the dais. The sphere's light coiled around him, pouring into his body. His flesh split in glowing seams, his veins turning silver like Ori's, but corrupted, jagged. You think I fear exposure? Pike roared. His voice echoed through the lattice, shaking the walls. I am the archive. I am every erasure, every silence. You cannot kill what holds the quill. Nixery lunged, but Pike moved faster than she'd ever seen, catching her mid-swing and hurling her across the hall. She struck the stone wall, her singed body crumpling. Cade fired 3 rounds, but Pike batted them aside with gestures, energy flaring like claws. Ori rose to her feet, trembling. You're not the archive. You're just another ending. Pike sneered. Then let me write yours. He raised a hand. The sphere blazed. And Cade stepped between Ori and the light. The energy struck him like a sun being poured into his veins. Cade's body screamed, but he stayed upright. The copper kestrel at his throat glowed white-hot. Dane! Nixery shouted, dragging herself to her feet. He turned his head just enough to meet her eyes. You taught me a comma, he said, voice ragged. Now I'll use it. The kestrel shattered. Light flared. And instead of absorbing Pike's power, Cade redirected it, straight back into the sphere. The dais exploded. Silver light cascaded across the hall, through the lattice, into the galaxy beyond. Every erased name, every silenced story, every forgotten truth came roaring back. Across thousands of sectors, people remembered. Families reunited. Histories rewritten into honesty. Pike screamed as the energy tore him apart. Not killed, unwritten? His body dissolved into fragments of silence, swallowed by the very ledger he had ruled. Cade collapsed. The hall was quiet but for the hum of returned memory. Nixery stumbled to Cade's side, cradling him in her arms. His body was burned, his breath shallow, but he was alive. Ori knelt opposite, her silver veins dimmed to soft glow. The ledger's broken. It's not erasing anymore. It's free. Sereth entered, eyes wet with awe. You've undone centuries. The archive still stands, but its spine is broken. Pike is gone. Nixery pressed her forehead to Cade's. You stubborn, reckless man. You gave them all back their stories. His eyes flickered open. Gunmetal, but softer now. I only needed one story to come back. Yours. Ori smiled through tears. Then let's write the rest together. The guardians outside began to chant, not erasure, but restoration. Names filled the hall like stars. And for the first time in decades, the universe felt like it was remembering how to breathe. The fall of Pike didn't end the archive. Empires don't dissolve, they splinter. Within weeks, 3 factions emerged. The Continuists swore loyalty to the old order, claiming Pike's death was archive propaganda. They tightened their grip, doubling erasures. The Pragmatics admitted the ledger was broken but wanted to wield the shards. They believed memory itself could be weaponized in wars to come. The Revisionists, the smallest, strangest faction, sought reconciliation. They believed the archive should preserve, not erase, and whispered Dane Cade's name like an omen. The echo became a moving target. Everywhere they jumped, messages followed, threats, offers, traps disguised as amnesties. Nixery paced the bridge. Pike's ghost is louder than his life. The archive isn't dead, it's hydra-headed. Cade, still healing, exhaled smoke he hadn't lit. Then we cut heads until something better grows. Ori stared at the stars. Her silver veins pulsed like constellations. Or we plant something ourselves. They anchored in a derelict station called Cloud Pier, long abandoned after fuel shortages. Refugees already lived there, people who remembered their names because of the ledger's collapse. When Cade and Nixery walked through the market, whispers followed. Children tugged at sleeves, asking for stories. Old men saluted like soldiers. Women pressed food into their hands. They think we're legends, Nixery muttered, ears flicking back. Cade looked at her sidelong. We are. Just inconvenient ones. That night, they held a council in the station's cold atrium. Margins, freed prisoners, revisionist defectors. Sarah stood at Cade's side, her voice steady. We can't fight as splinters, she said. If we remain scattered, the archive devours us one by one. But if we unite, if we make memory our weapon, we can build a republic that survives erasure. Nixery glanced at Cade. And who leads it? The hall looked at him. Cade's jaw worked. I'm no leader, he said. I'm a man who spent 25 years putting periods at the ends of sentences. Someone else needs to decide what comes after. Ori's young voice carried, resonant, undeniable. Then we'll write together. News reached them of survivors from the Phantom Choir. 3 had lived through Ori's feedback, their throats seared but still dangerous. They had gone rogue, no longer serving archive orders but singing for whoever paid enough. They're mercenaries now, Sareth warned. Selling voices to warlords, bending minds for coins. They'll hunt us, Cade said flatly. Nixery's fur bristled. Then we hunt them first. The echo found the choir on a desert moon where glass storms screamed across endless plains. Their songs warped the wind itself, turning storms into hallucinations. The battle wasn't fought with blades or bullets, it was fought with will. Nixery lashed herself to Cade with a length of cable so they wouldn't lose each other in illusions. Ori held her hands over her ears, glowing veins pulsing, rewriting the frequencies mid-air. When the last of the choir fell silent, the storm cleared. The desert lay still. Cade unhooked the cable from his waist and looked at Nixery. You trust me to keep you tethered? She bared sharp teeth in a grin. Always. The archive retaliated with a weapon no ship could shoot down, stories. Across the networks, ghost broadcasts aired, grainy videos of Dane Cade executing prisoners, of Nixery Vale burning settlements, of Ori 9 rewriting whole cities into madness. They're forgeries. Nixery spat, claws biting into the echo's console. They don't need to be real, Cade said grimly. They just need to be believed. Refugees closed doors. Smugglers refused docking. Even the revisionists grew wary. Ori worked tirelessly, diving into the network, chasing threads of deception. Her silver eyes stayed lit for hours, her body trembling. At last she surfaced. The forgeries trace back to a continuous hub in the bladed rift. They're writing a counter-legend. Nixery touched Ori's cheek, grounding her. Then we burn their pen. Cade shook his head. No. Burning just feeds the myth. We expose it. Truth against lies. For once, Nixery smiled without malice. That sounds dangerously poetic, Bureau man. Cade allowed himself a ghost of a smile. Commas, Vale. Always commas. The bladed rift was a maze of asteroid shards, spinning in gravitational eddies like knives. At its center pulsed the continuous hub, a fortress woven into 3 jagged spires. The echoes slipped and cloaked, guided by Ori's threads. Inside, they found halls full of recorders, spinning endless lies. Screens showed Cade's face killing innocents, Nixery's claws dripping with imaginary blood. Ori's eyes silvered with madness. They're trying to overwrite us in real time, Ori whispered. Nixery growled. Then let's overwrite them. They stormed the hub. Cade fought with brutal economy, each shot a correction. Nixery slashed through lies with fire-bright arcs. Ori hacked the central feed, flooding the networks not with propaganda, but with memory, children freed from ash markets, monks singing names in the monastery, margins dropping weapons instead of raising them. The galaxy saw truth. Not perfect. Not clean. But real. And for the first time, the archive's lies began to crack. The bladed rift victory spread faster than the archive could suppress. In refugee markets, they whispered Nixery's name with reverence. In old Dominion shrines, they lit candles for Ori 9, calling her the Silver Child. Even Dane Cade, who had spent his life being a weapon, found himself painted on walls, a myth with smoke in his eyes. But belief was dangerous. The continuists struck back with assassins disguised as pilgrims. The pragmatics offered alliances, sweet with poison. Even some revisionists pressed too hard, trying to make the echo into a symbol it didn't want to be. One night in Cloud Pier, Nixery sat with Kate above the market, watching lanterns drift into the dark. "They don't see me," she murmured. "They see what they want me to be." Kate handed her a cigarette unlit. "Symbols aren't supposed to be seen. They're supposed to be believed in." Nixery flicked her hook against the railing, sparks bright in the dark. "Then let's make them believe in something worth bleeding for." The margins who had followed from the scriptorium were restless. Some wanted revenge, some wanted peace, some just wanted to disappear. Kate called them together in the echo's hold. "You've seen me at my worst," he said plainly. "I've been a leash, a blade, a signature at the end of death orders. If you follow me, you'll keep bleeding. If you leave, no one will stop you. But decide now, because hesitation kills faster than bullets." A tall woman with burned scars stepped forward. "We're not soldiers anymore. We're witnesses. And someone needs to carry the truth." Nixery nodded. "Then you're more than fighters. You're scribes of the living. Tell the stories the archive can't erase." So the margins became the fold, chroniclers of rebellion, armed less with weapons than with memory. They traveled on smaller ships, shadowing the echo, spreading not just victories but failures, doubts, laughter in kitchens, proof that resistance was human, not myth. For once, Cade felt like maybe the story wasn't just his to carry. Ori 9's powers grew stranger with each passing day. She no longer just interfaced with systems, she influenced them. Lights flickered when she dreamed. Communications rerouted themselves when she spoke. Sometimes she answered questions before they were asked, reading data streams buried in probability. It frightened her. "Am I even a person anymore?" she whispered to Nixery one night. Her mother pulled her close, stroking silver-streaked fur. "You are more than they built you to be. That makes you dangerous. And beautiful." Cade overheard, his jaw tight. "The archive will come for her harder now," he said later to Nixery. "Pike's gone, but the continuists will see Ori as their holy grail." Nixery's claws flexed. "Then let them come. She's ours. Not theirs." Ori smiled faintly. "I'm not anyone's. But I'll fight beside you, always." For the first time, her voice carried weight not of a child but of a commander. The continuists struck Cloud Pier at dawn. Their fleet came silent, cloaked, only visible when shadows fell wrong across stars. The first blast shattered the outer ring. Refugees screamed as vacuum claimed them. Nixery dove into the chaos, pulling children into shelters, her hooks carving steel doors shut. Ori stood in the atrium, eyes glowing silver, rerouting failing bulkheads with whispers. Cade met the continuist boarding squads with violence tuned to perfection. He moved through them like smoke given purpose, no wasted breath, no wasted bullets. But there were too many. "Evacuate!" he roared. "Get them to the fold ships!" Nixery dragged Ori toward the docks. "We can't hold this." But Ori stopped, her veins burning bright. "I can lock the fleet out, turn their cloaks against them." "You'll burn yourself," Nixery warned. Ori smiled with her mother's stubbornness. "Better me than everyone else." She screamed once, pure silver light. Cloaked ships blinked visible, every one outlined in fire. Fold ships unleashed fury, tearing the continuous fleet apart. Ori collapsed. They saved Cloud Pier, but at a cost. Ori lay unconscious for 2 days, her silver veins dimmed, her small body fever-hot. Nixery barely left her side. Cade stood guard at the hatch, smoking cigarettes he didn't light. When Ori woke, her first words were, "Did the names survive?" Nixery laughed through tears. "Yes, child. All of them. And you." Cade leaned in, his voice hoarse. "You nearly killed yourself. Don't do that again." Ori met his eyes. "If I have to burn so others remember who they are, then I'll burn." That's what it means to exist. Sereth entered then, placing a hand on Cade's shoulder. You see? She's not just a child. She's a legacy. The archive thought it could script her. Instead, she writes herself. Cade looked at Nixery, at Ori, at the fold beyond the echo's walls. For the first time, he felt the weight of something he hadn't chosen but couldn't deny. They weren't fugitives anymore. They were the keepers of memory. And the galaxy was finally starting to believe. The collapse of the ledger did more than wound the archive. It shook the Senate itself. Worlds once terrified of erasure now screamed for accountability. Hearings stretched across entire systems, but the truth was too large to contain. Senators who had leaned on the archive's silence found themselves hunted by their own people. Messages reached the echo in every port: come testify, come lead, come save us. Nixery spat at one such message, claws tapping the screen. They ignored us when Pike ruled. Now they want us as saviors? Cade smoked a cigarette he never lit, watching it burn down anyway. They don't want us. They want the myth they think we are. Ori, listening quietly, murmured, maybe myths are what the galaxy needs right now. Sereth nodded slowly. Then let us be myths who tell the truth. But while the Senate flailed, the continuist sharpened. A warlord named Iroh Voss emerged, once a minor officer, now draped in archive black, calling himself the Continuation. He claimed Pike's mantle, arguing the ledger's fracture was a deliberate test. His fleets cut across 3 sectors, offering one choice: bend the knee or be erased the old way, by fire. Refugee caravans burned. Settlements collapsed under orbital strikes. We can't match fleets, Sereth warned. Cade's voice was iron. Then we don't fight fleets. We fight him. Nixery's grin was sharp. A knife for a knife. Ori's silver veins flickered as she read reports. He's heading to the Iron Hallow. That's where we cut him. Iron Hallow was a broken moon, its surface jagged from centuries of mining. Voss had turned it into a fortress. Towers of scavenged metal bristled with cannons, while his flagship hung above like a predator watching prey. The Echo ghosted in, fold ships following in scattered formation. The plan was simple: Nixery and Cade would infiltrate, Ori would sabotage the flagship's systems from within, and the fold would strike once chaos began. They moved through Hallow's tunnels, walls sweating rust, echoes thick with machinery. Nixery's hooks hummed faintly in the dark, her movements a predator's grace. Cade's every step was measured, as if the floor itself were watching. At the court chamber, Voss waited. Broad armored, his cloak stitched from archive banners. His voice boomed. You come as thieves, but you walk into history. I am the archive's rebirth. I am the new period at the end of the galaxy's sentence. Cade raised his pistol. Then let me introduce you to Akama. The chamber erupted in violence. Voss fought with a massive glaive charged by stolen archive tech, each swing cracking stone. Nixery darted around him, slashing arcs that sparked off his armor. Cade fired with surgical precision, but the warlord's shield absorbed the blows. Voss laughed, his voice echoing like thunder. You were Pike's pet, Cade. Now you're a stray dog biting at giants. Cade said nothing. He moved closer, every step deliberate. Nixery lunged, hooking one plasma blade into Voss's shield generator. Sparks flew. The shield flickered. Now! She screamed. Cade fired 3 rounds into the exposed joints. Voss roared, swinging wildly. Nixery caught the glaive on her hooks, muscles screaming, holding him long enough for Cade to step forward and press his pistol to the warlord's throat. Stories don't end with tyrants, Cade said. He pulled the trigger. Voss collapsed, his cloak burning to ash. The fortress erupted. Without Voss, the continuous fleet fractured, commanders arguing, ships fleeing or turning on each other. The fold struck, crippling cannons, freeing prisoners, burning archive banners in every corridor. But victory came at cost. Ori had dived so deep into the flagship's systems that her body convulsed, her veins a blazing silver map. Nixery cradled her in the Echo's medbay, fury and fear in equal measure. She's pushing herself too far, Nixery snarled. She's holding a fleet together long enough for us to live, Cade said, voice raw. Ori's eyes snapped open, blazing silver-white. Not long. Just enough. The flagship tore itself apart, systems eating themselves under her influence. The blast lit the iron hollow like dawn. The continuous fleet scattered, broken, leaderless. When Ori collapsed again, her body trembling, Nixery whispered fiercely. You're ours. You don't get to leave. Not yet. Cade stood in the doorway, silent. He looked at mother and daughter, and for once, let himself believe they could build something worth the blood. News of Vasa's fall spread faster than light could travel. Worlds that had bent to the archive's shadow for generations rose up overnight. Fold banners appeared on mining rigs, desert camps, even on station hulls where children painted them in ash and grease. But for every ember of rebellion, a storm gathered. Other continuous leaders crawled from the dark, each claiming Pike's will as their own. Fleets split, planets fractured, civil war blooming like rot. Inside the echo, Nixery sharpened her hooks, her tail lashing. We didn't kill an empire. We kicked it into pieces. Cade sipped cold CAF, jaw tight. Pieces are easier to burn. Ori leaned on the console, her silver glow dim but steady. Not if the pieces learn to bite each other harder than us. The Senate called an emergency convocation on Luth Orin, a world once shattered by archive erasure. Senators argued in a great chamber still scarred with craters, their voices a roar of fear and ambition. The Fold was summoned, treated half as saviors, half as dangerous symbols. Nixery hated every moment. She snarled when one senator dared to call Ori the child of contagion. Cade gripped her arm under the table. Let them choke on their words. We need their fleets. Ori's eyes swept the chamber, calm despite the venom aimed at her. They don't need us. They need hope. If I must be their lantern, I'll burn. The Senate voted, recognition of the Fold as an official resistance. But recognition came with chains, oversight committees, resource audits, endless strings. Nixery growled as they left. They'll use us until they don't. Cade flicked his cigarette into the dust. Then we stay useful longer than they expect. Meridian Reach was supposed to be a joint strike, Fold cells and Senate fleets hitting a continuous armory. Instead, the Senate ships pulled away mid-battle, leaving the Fold alone. Explosions painted the sky red. Fold fighters burned. Ground teams screamed for evac. Nixery fought like a demon, dragging comrades into cover, her armor black with ash. Cade stormed the Senate comms channel, voice venom. You pulled us out to bleed. The reply was ice. The Fold grows too strong. The galaxy needs balance. Ori's body shook as she overrode the Reach defense systems, frying her own nerves to crash cannons before they vaporized her family. When the battle ended, the Fold survived, but barely. Back on the Echo, Nixery punched a bulkhead until her claws cracked. They're worse than the archive. Ori, pale and trembling, whispered. No. They're scared of becoming it. The Fold splintered. Some cells demanded revenge on the Senate. Others argued survival meant merging into Senate fleets. Messages burned across the Echo's console, each more desperate than the last. Cade watched them in silence, smoke curling around his fingers. Finally, he spoke. We can't serve both masters. Not the Senate. Not their warlords. Only the people who bleed. Nixery's eyes softened, rare and fierce. And what of us? What of her? She glanced at Ori, asleep in the medbay, veins still faintly silver. Cade exhaled, ash falling. If the galaxy burns, we keep her alive long enough to choose what rises from the ashes. The Fold struck out alone. No Senate strings, no continuous leash. They liberated convoys, sabotaged armories, and seeded rebellions in places too small for the Senate to care about. In the ruins of the Reach, families whispered their names like a prayer. Nixery the Talon. Cade the Stray. Ori the Light. But power was a gravity all its own. For every world freed, more voices called them leaders, demanded strategies, begged for weapons. On the Echo's bridge, Ori looked out at a sunrise over a freed colony. We're not ghosts anymore. Nixery's hand rested on her daughter's shoulder. No. We're fire. And fire spreads. Cade said nothing. He simply lit another cigarette and watched the dawn through smoke. Whispers spread. The fold was too dangerous, too independent. Senate envoys offered bribes and titles if they would bend. Continuous remnants tried assassins instead. The Echo became a hunted ship. Every port meant risk, every ally a coin flip. Nixery slept in her armor, Cade with his blaster under the pillow. Ori grew quieter, watching the galaxy tear itself apart. One night she asked, voice trembling, "Did we really make it better? Or did we just break the cage so the beasts inside could fight louder?" Nixery had no answer. Cade just smoked in silence, the ember his only reply. A coup tore through the Senate. Hardliners rose, declaring the fold a destabilizing contagion. Arrest warrants went out. Fleets mobilized, not against the continuists, but against Nixery's people. The Echo was ambushed above Darren Prime. Explosions lit the void. Nixery ripped through borders with bare claws. Cade piloted like a devil, weaving the ship through collapsing debris. Ori sat in the center chamber, forcing her silver-lit veins to override enemy targeting systems. Each override tore screams from her throat. When the Echo escaped, barely, Ori collapsed into Nixery's arms. Her pulse was faint. Her words were weaker. "They'll never let us live. Not if we keep burning." From the chaos rose a new continuous figure, the Revenant of Pike. His face was hidden, his fleet forged from shattered loyalists and Senate deserters. He promised to finish Pike's vision with cleaner fire. But whispers in back alleys said the Revenant had once been a senator, a man who turned coat when power shifted. His fleet moved fast, striking both Senate and Fold holdings, claiming to be the Third Way. Nixery spat at his name. "Another liar with a banner." Cade flicked ash on the floor. "Difference is, this one might actually win." The Fold, the Senate, and the Revenant's fleet all converged at Orion Gate, a massive relay hub that could control supply lines for 100 systems. The battle was chaos, three sides tearing each other apart. Nixery led ground teams, claws and blades soaked in blood. Cade flew gunships until smoke choked the cockpit. Ori sat wired into the gate's core, her silver veins blazing, overriding firewalls faster than fleets could respond. At the peak, Ori screamed, "I can shut them all down. But it'll burn me out." Nixery tore through to her side, eyes wide. "No. You're not dying for them." Cade staggered in, armor cracked, voice low. "Kid, if you don't, none of this ends." Ori looked at them both, tears glowing silver. "Then tell me, what kind of galaxy am I saving?" Silence hung in the core chamber, battles raging outside. Nixery dropped her blade, grabbed Ori's face with bloodied hands. "Not theirs. Not the Senate's. Not the Revenant's. Yours. You save it for you." Cade lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "And maybe for us. So we can see what it looks like when the fire stops." Ori smiled faintly. "Then I'll make it mine." She reached into the gate with everything she had. Systems crashed across fleets. Engines died. Weapons locked. For one endless moment, the galaxy fell silent. The aftermath was ruin. Fleets drifted dead. Leaders screamed across broken comms. The Revenant's flagship tried to flee. Nixery personally boarded and tore through its bridge, ending him with her claws. The Senate limped away, humiliated. Worlds burned, but also, for the first time, free. Ori lay in medbay, veins dim, her glow nearly gone. Nixery never left her side. Cade sat nearby, chain-smoking until the cabin reeked. When Ori finally woke, her voice was a whisper. "Is it over?" Nixery kissed her forehead. "No. But they can't chain you anymore." Weeks later, the Echo drifted above a quiet colony freed in the chaos. Children painted the Fold symbol on walls. Old songs returned to marketplaces. For once, laughter sounded louder than gunfire. Ori walked slowly, still weak, her silver glow now only a faint shimmer. Nixery walked at her side, claws sheathed, for once unneeded. Cade trailed behind, cigarette in his lips, eyes tired but alive. On a hill above the colony, Ori whispered, "We didn't win. We just stopped them from owning everything." Nixery squeezed her hand. "That's enough. For now." Cade exhaled smoke into the sky. "Let the Senate, the warlords, the ghosts fight over ash. We'll keep the embers alive." The three of them stood together, watching a new dawn rise over a scarred galaxy, not perfect, not safe, but theirs.